Welcome to the wrestling podcast that's not just for wrestling fans. This is Smark and Friends on lovewrestling.ca. My name is Zach and I'll be your host. This is a bit of a bittersweet return for me. I took a little time away from the Smark and Friends microphone, took a little me time, recharged the batteries and everything. But of course, as you just heard, we've moved to a new network. We are now a proud member of the Love Wrestling family. This, of course, means we have departed from the Two Finger Guns Club. TFGC, I cannot say enough good things about. Without the TFGC, without Alexa, without Alex, and without Tina, simply put, Smark and Friends would not exist. I am so grateful for the opportunity that they afforded me to grow as a content creator, to create content with me, and it was just a hell of a ride. And I'm sad to see it come to an end. TFGC, of course, went their own separate ways as well. But again, I am so happy to find a new home for Smark and Friends with Love Wrestling. I have pardon me, emotions. I have, of course, been a proud member of Love Wrestling since the inception, working on other projects, and I'm so happy that Smark and Friends finds a very comfortable home here at Love Wrestling. And we're kicking off in a big way. Maybe you're joining us on podcast. You might not know we're actually going to be delving into video as well. So this podcast that you're listening to is also available on the Love Wrestling Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch channels. So check those out if you want to join in video style. And vice versa. If you're catching the video, we're also on Podbean. We're also on Apple Podcasts, wherever you want to indulge in Smark and Friends content. Now we are kicking things off with a very big interview. I was so excited that I was able to land this one. We are speaking with the voice of the National Wrestling Alliance, Mr. Joe Galli. We spoke before NWA's huge weekend that just passed. They had back-to-back pay-per-views that included Empower and NWA 73. We talk all about the excitement levels that the NWA was experiencing in their locker room, and of course the amazing coverage that they got in St. Louis. They returned to the Chase Park Plaza, wrestling history, for the first time in 37 years. So this was a very big deal for the NWA and for wrestling as a whole. So Joe has a great snapshot of what the excitement level was like in the NWA locker room. You might also know that Joe is also a news reporter and an Emmy award-winning one at that. We talk about the surprising overlap between pro wrestling coverage and conventional news coverage. We talk about the mental taxation of covering difficult stories, and we revisit a viral clip that in which Joe masterfully deals with a troll on air. It's a lot of fun. All this and more right after this message.
Yo! We're the Boros Twins.
I'm the world's sweetest man, Gentleman Jervis.
This is God's gift to wrestling, Michael Richard Blaze.
This is Chelsea Green.
And we love wrestling.
And I love wrestling.
And I love wrestling.
And I love wrestling.
Oh, we're going to see a superplex powerbomb!
Just coming up to the building, Colton Kelly. Colton, I am sorry to interrupt your cigarette, my friend.
If they weren't the MVPs of pandemic wrestling, then I honestly don't know who are.
Of course, we did want to give everybody a bit of a rundown on what you can expect here on Love Wrestling through 2021 and beyond.
This crowd is going bananas! I'm Spencer Love, and this is Love Wrestling.
And we are back. Joining me today is the lead commentator of the National Wrestling Alliance. He's also a trainer for the Dog Pound Dojo and Emmy award-winning news reporter Joe Galli. Welcome to the show.
Zach, I'm so happy to be here. Let me ask you a question, Zach. I know that you're just starting out in the podcast world. Do you have any big sponsors?
Well, we're working with RK Fitness. This is the sponsor for Love Wrestling. And so, I've pop their branding, down my right-hand corner here.
All right. When you're done with that fitness and you're looking to relax, nothing's more delicious than a delicious, now natural Busch Light beer. Busch Light, brewed in St. Louis, Missouri. When you want to go for a beer, don't just grab any beer. Reach for the mountains with Busch Light.
Well done. Would you, indulge me 10 seconds to run to my fridge and grab a beer myself?
By all means.
Thank you.
I'd be offended if you didn't. Folks, we're going to take a little intermission here, and I'll continue to talk about the delicious flavor of all-natural Busch Light. Coming from the Rocky Mountains is where they source their water from, and used all-natural flavors to bring a classic beer, which has been a mainstay and a supporter of the National Wrestling Alliance for many decades.
Masterful. And there's an appearance by your cat.
Oh, hi, Ted. That's Ted.
Great name.
Girl. Yeah. I call her Teddy Spaghetti. There's a goosey goose spaghetti.
She's such a cutie.
I know you're a big baby. My other cat's Megatron. She would attack. I can't hold Megatron. Megatron is a fighter. She is like total, like ruthless killer, wildcat. So, yeah.
Great names. Great names. Yeah. So on top of everything else, you're also a Transformers fan.
Oh, who isn't? Come on, man. Have you been watching that new stuff that they got on the Netflix? That's all cool.
I have not started that yet.
Yeah, they got some new stuff on there. It's all like 3D anime. They brought back Beast Wars stuff, and I'm getting way off topic and stuff. I love wrestling, but I love Transformers too. Why not?
We are all about the non sequiturs and moving on to other topics here on the Smark and Friends podcast. We call ourselves the wrestling podcast that's not just for wrestling fans for a reason. So again, happy to divulge off topic, but let's jump into wrestling for a moment because you have been behind the commentary table at NWA for two of the probably the most interesting years in company history. You had like the critically acclaimed run on YouTube. You had, of course, the hiatus driven by a pandemic, really when the ball was starting to roll for the NWA. And now you got this great deal on Fight TV. Very broad strokes question here, but what's it like being the voice of the NWA during such a time?
You know, it's really kind of surreal. I never thought I would be in this position. And you think of all the people that have, you know, the moniker of the voice of the National Wrestling Alliance was bestowed upon me. I never called myself that, but I started to be introduced that way. And part of me still feels uncomfortable with it just because there's so many different voices in the National Wrestling Alliance. And not just talking from a commentary perspective, but also if you take a look at our wrestlers that are also talking about it, why isn't Nick Aldis or Trevor Murdoch or any of the other champions that we may have, you know, why aren't they the voice or who's the face? So but to answer your question, what it's been like, it's been very rewarding. And I have to say, like, as difficult as it was getting through the pandemic and as much as it derailed everything that we really wanted to do at the time, you know, it kind of gave me something to do. You know, when you love wrestling, like I know you do, I know your viewers do, you always want to be a part of it. And so when you have the pandemic and everything gets shut down, for me to be able to do something small and still provide some entertainment for people and still kind of, you know, scratch that itch of professional wrestling, it was super necessary. And now, you know, with St. Louis and you're wrestling at the Chase, and things are just getting better and better as we continue on to the National Wrestling Alliance. And I'm just really happy to be a part of it. It's a fantastic brand. It's Megatron, I heard you. It's the longest living brand in the sport of professional wrestling. And it's surreal that I'm a part of something that, you know, was a home for people like Ric Flair, like Harley Race, like Gordon Soley. The list goes on and on and on and on. And to be the person who's sitting at the desk in this current form of the National Wrestling Alliance, I'm humbled. I'll tell you that. I'm certainly humbled. And it just motivates me to work harder and harder every single day. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. I call her Ron for short.
Okay. Sounds like Ron agrees with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate you.
You know, just like on the whole subject of commentary, I think like one of the unsung stories about this post-hiatus run of NWA has been watching Tim Storm and Velvet Sky grow in their roles as commentators. Because, man, it's just like a privilege to listen to them grow alongside you at the commentary table. What's it been like working with them these past few months?
You know, I've known Tim Storm for a long, long, long time. You know, well before I was picked to be a commentator for the National Wrestling Alliance. I spent years as the commentator for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which they're still making shows. That's Dave Marquez's production. If anybody wants to see any of their products anywhere in the world, it's available on Fight TV for free. And I wouldn't be anywhere without having that start with Dave Marquez. And that's how I got introduced to Tim, and how I got introduced to Nick and to Billy. And so having that history with Tim is great. And Tim's just such a down-to-earth guy. I mean, he is such a chill dude. And his knowledge of professional wrestling is on par with the greats. I mean, there's people out there, people say Tony Khan is an encyclopedia of pro wrestling, and that may be true. I've never met TK, but I can tell you Tim Storm is in that same caliber. And then you take a look at Velvet, and it's always Velvet time. And she's done everything. She's been a world champion, and she just brings in something. And this is exactly why Billy Corgan picked her to be in that position there at the desk. Is she's not your traditional broadcaster. She's not somebody that has a lot of experience in it, but the way that she talks and the way that she communicates opens us door for a whole nother audience, an audience of people who might not be dedicated pro wrestling fans, but someone who might be the spouse of someone who is. There might be, if you're the husband sitting there watching Power, sometimes we hear, oh, my wife's really into it and she loves Velvet. So it draws in that person there. And what was so amazing, and I have to say one of the things I've been so fortunate with in the NWA specifically, is I've always had immediate chemistry with everybody that I've done commentary with. Everybody that, whether it's Stu Bennett, aka Wade Barrett, whether it was Jim Cornette, whether it was Ian Riccaboni when we had the show with him, and it was Marty Scurll versus Nick Aldis for the World Heavyweight Championship. All of those people, immediate connections, everything works. We're firing on all cylinders, and it's really cool that I've had that, because I've worked other promotions where sometimes you're working with somebody and it's not there, and it's kind of like being on a date. If you're on a date and the chemistry's there, it's a great date. If the chemistry's not there, you might get through it. You're going to eat your steak and you're going to pay your bill, but you don't know how much longer this is going to go for, because there's just something not clicking. And sometimes it just takes time to get over that hill, and you have to build a rapport and build chemistry with people. But I have been so fortunate in my career for the vast majority of people that have been my commentary partner. Johnny LaQuasto, as people might know him from WWE as John Quasto, because they always have to rebrand you over there on the big big ship. But I mean, we worked for years with Dave Marquez in Championship Wrestling, and then also my other favorite TK in pro wrestling, Todd Kennelly, who you may remember from his time in TNA and Impact, and sitting next to Mike Tenay. He's fantastic as well too. So I've had a super privilege to work with so many people and so many promotions, but everyone that I've worked with in the NWA from a commentary standpoint is just, they're all ballers. They're all ballers for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, like, on the note on chemistry, I got to put you over on that, man, because not only do you have a revolving door of people who have been staying at the commentary table for longer stretches of time, but the current run of NWA, you always have someone who's involved in the action, be it the Pope, be it Aaron Stevens. You got a revolving door at the table. It's a very dynamic experience for myself as the viewer, and again, you click with every one of them. So again, bravo on that.
Well, it comes down to really us having an incredible roster. We are not the biggest kid on the block. We do not have the most talent to pull from, but I would argue we have the best talent to pull from. And you have a lot of people out there that just weren't given the right opportunity. They weren't given the right moment. They weren't, a lot of them just needed to have the leash taken off, and then you're going to see them run, and it'll be beautiful and it'll be incredible. And so you've got guys like that, especially a guy like Aaron Stevens, who's done it all, wrestled all over the world, biggest arenas, WrestleMania moments, yada, yada, yada. And then he puts on the gi and he's having a great time, being Shooter Stevens. And you see that creativity that he has. I mean, he is an incredibly creative person, and his mind is it's always going to different things. So enabled to have a conversation with him and to call commentary and for him to help participate in that storytelling is really fun. So he's always fun. And I mean, everybody, that's the great thing about the National Wrestling Alliance. We really take our roots and our heritage very, very seriously. And if you look back at Jim Crockett Productions, if you look at Georgia Championship Wrestling, if you look at Mid-South, if you couldn't talk, you couldn't work. And so you have to be able to talk. And that's for everybody that's there. And so it's super important to have that aspect. And there are plenty of professional wrestlers out there, some of whom are very good friends of mine, who are fantastic tacticians, but they're lacking in the promo and the commentary and being able to verbally tell that story. And that'll always hold that person back. And because you could have somebody who maybe isn't the best pro wrestler, maybe not even the top 1,000 pro wrestler, but if they could talk, you can make money with that all day, every day, and people want to hear it and they want to see it.
You brought up Aaron Stevens, and that actually is a good segue for this next, I don't want to call it a question per se. At risk of kind of like heading toward bringing this podcast at more of a somber tone, I feel it'd be remiss if we didn't take a moment to discuss Joseph Hudson, Josephus, the question mark. Again, not so much a question. I'm just wondering if you want to take a moment, express any thoughts you have on his absence in the National Wrestling Alliance.
Well, we feel it every day, and he comes up, and everyone's got a Josephus story. Everyone, because he was so enigmatic and he was so creative. And I remember one time, our first set of tapings at GPB Studios. Joseph was there, and for whatever reason, there was a piano in the hallway. It was probably for some other show that just needed a piano. And he sits down and he's just playing beautifully on this piano. And one of the other wrestlers, somebody came up and sat next to him. I can't remember who this was. I might be retelling their story, as a matter of fact. But nevertheless, they sat down and they said, Joseph, is there anything you can't do? And without missing a beat, he said, have a successful relationship, and just kept playing. And it was just, he was so quick and he was so funny, and he was such a good dude to be around. And, we all miss him. I'm super glad that we have the Mongrovian flag hanging in the NWA arena, as it should. And he'll always be a part of our history. And there were so many great moments. I mean, if you take a look at that empty arena match, which was well before COVID, so we were way ahead of our time on that one.
Pioneers.
Between him and Tim Storm, those guys beat the crap out of each other in that empty arena. And so, there's so many big moments that he's always going to be a part of. And we carry him in our hearts, we carry him in our minds. And, and going forward, everything we do, we know he's looking down, and we know he's smiling and really enjoys it. Another side note, when we were giving him the bell salute, the person who was operating the bell when we came back to do NWA Power, admittedly, we had somebody who had never rung a bell at a wrestling show before. And so he ended up getting an 8-bell salute instead of a 10-bell salute. And I could see, there was a moment, and I saw Billy Corgan cracking up, and he's like, no, he's glad it happened that way because Joseph would have thought it was funny. And so it was good. So we'll always miss him, and we'll always love him, and but we know he's looking down on us.
Just out of curiosity, did they add the extra 2 bells in post?
We did not.
No.
Go back and watch the tape.
Marvelous. I did miss that detail, but you got my curiosity. I'm probably going to have to go back and take a look. Again, knowing him only so distantly through all these amazing stories we hear about him, I have to imagine that the man would be proud about this big, huge weekend that the NWA has coming up in just a few weeks. We're going to be airing, of course, this interview after this big weekend in question. So this is something of a time capsule of a question for you. But what's the energy like in GPB Studio right now as we approach EMPOWERRR and NWA 73?
Well, I have to say the energy with the NWA roster, it's super energized. It's probably, we are getting the most media coverage that we've ever gotten. I mean, that's including, the participation that we had at All In. That's including the Crockett Cup that we did in North Carolina. What's happening in St. Louis is drawing all kinds of press. And it's not just gentlemen like yourself, Zach, no offense, but it's drawing the traditional media that a lot of wrestling doesn't really get. I mean, WWE will get it because they're WWE and they're going to sell out the AT&T Center in San Antonio for a Raw taping. And so they'll be able to send whoever, Randy Orton to every morning show, and they'll give him 10 minutes. But for us, as this little niche company that's rising and trying to make something, not the first time there's wrestling at the Chase in 37 years, we have, reporters from Rolling Stone, Forbes, every local paper that's there, every local television station wants a spot there. And so that's really showing the interest that people have in our product. And people who work in NWA and the people who are wrestling at Empower, at NWA 73, at our NWA Power tapings, they see that and they feel that. And I've had many conversations, especially with some of the newer female talent that I've never had to call commentary for. And so I like to talk to them ahead of time if I can, just to kind of get the particulars. It's always good to know what your finisher's called. You know what I mean? You don't want to try to figure that out on the fly. So like, if you were to win a match, what would you use? And then they would tell me the name of it, their version of it. And other conversations like that. But in just talking about it, they've all said basically the same thing, that they can't believe that they're going to be wrestling at the Chase, that they're going to be a part of this historic moment, that they're, potentially could be the recrowning of the NWA World's Women's Tag Team Championship belts. I mean, you've got some amazing competitors that are there, some that have very long lineages with the National Wrestling Alliance. And they understand that this is a huge opportunity. And even though there's a lot that are cross-platform, Deonna Purrazzo, she's on Impact. It wouldn't surprise me to see her on AEW. By the time this airs, she might have already done that, but you've got all of these different things. We're having wrestlers from AAA come in. We're having wrestlers from Impact Wrestling come in. And so, but at the same time, all of those institutions have their own pay-per-views. But I think, I won't speak for anyone, but my assumption is they feel that this is special, this is different, and this is unique. And it's something that I think people will talk about for a while. And the same way that people talked about, as I rep the shirt, the NWA 70th anniversary show, and the same way that they talked about the Crockett Cup, and the same way that they talk about all of the other pay-per-views that we've done, even When Our Shadows Fall, which was in our home arena at GPB Studios, they know that what we're doing at the Chase is going to be very special. It's going to be very different. It's a major undertaking. It's going to look different than anything you'll ever see in professional wrestling today. I don't know, Zach, if you've seen any of those vintage clips.
Oh yeah,
I mean, where the tables and the bar service and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like when you watch an episode of Mad Men and they're getting on the suit, they're getting on the plane and they're wearing a full suit. Like, who does that nowadays? So I think that there's the level of excitement between our staff and our talent. I mean, we're chomping at the bit to be there.
If I may ask, do we know who's going to be at the commentary booth for Empower?
For Empower, I will guarantee you that Velvet Sky will be there.
Excellent.
But at the time of this recording, I do not think we have made some very special announcements yet. And Zach, I love you all, but I know Billy Corgan would be mad at me for spoiling it, because I know he wants to say it, or probably Mickey James wants to make some big announcements. But we will have some very recognizable names that'll be in that commentary booth.
I was just hoping I would endear myself to the my new network at Love Wrestling with some breaking news, but I definitely respect the need for discretion on that particular note.
Man, I can't step on it. I wish I could. And that, well, and the other thing too is, some things, even down to the wire, some things, we think it's going to happen, but we don't know if it's going to happen. This person might have a contract here. They might not have a contract by the time, so we don't know. So it's just, we're in an interesting position that I'm surprised we haven't made some of the announcements. But I will tell you this, for right now, we have, at the time of this recording, we just had an episode of Power, which featured very heavily a lot of the stuff that you'll see at NWA 73. This coming week, you don't want to miss NWA Power, because we're going to be really leaning into what you are likely going to see at Empower. And there's going to be a lot of stuff there. There's going to be breaking news, all kinds of great stuff. So please continue to watch.
Very exciting. I will be certainly on the screen. I'm unfortunately not going to be doing Power that night. I'm going to get someone else from the Love Wrestling team to handle that, because I unfortunately will be out of town. But I will not miss Power.
Watch it. Still watch
absolutely.
Watch it on your phone. That's the great thing about Fight TV. Watch it anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, magic of the modern world. Outside of the NWA, this coming Friday, actually, you're going to be part of Mission Pro Wrestling's Shoot to Thrill charity event benefiting the San Antonio Salvation Army. Now, from what I understand, you've been called out by a local radio personality. So I just wanted to offer you, if you have anything to say, if you wanted to say your piece on the matter in hand, the floor is yours.
I made it very, very clear to Chris, not a lot of people know this about me, but, I didn't just sit in a commentary booth and that was my first introduction to the sport of professional wrestling. I've been a worker for many, many years. I've been in this business for 12 years, and the majority of it has been working in the ring. And so I'm no stranger to danger. And if somebody wants to dance, well, I've got my dancing shoes on, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. In all honesty, I hope it doesn't. Because Chris, who's part of the Billy Madison Show, I have been a fan of for a very long time. The Billy Madison Show airs here in San Antonio. It's also syndicated in several other markets as well. And there was a number of years where I was living in Palm Springs, California, which was one of the smaller markets, and driving into work every day, or driving into the gym every day because I worked the later nights. I would listen to them on the radio. So I've been a big fan for a long time, and I don't want to hurt anybody that I like. So I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail. But as I've said on Twitter, if you're going to come at me at Mission Pro, at Shoot to Thrill, it benefits the Salvation Army, but you better bring an army of your own.
That is cold. That is cold. Yeah. You piqued my interest on this, my friend.
A lot of people don't know this about me. I got squabbles. I've been in situations before. People see, Emmy award-winning broadcast journalist, whatever. Wears makeup and does his hair, and I keep playing with it because I keep seeing it in the screen and it's bugging me. It shows how egotistical I am. But I've done extensive training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. I did not come from means. And while I was, going to the wonderful institution of California State University, Northridge, go Matadors, to get my journalism degree, I was working at Rite Aid as an undercover loss prevention officer. For you folks at home that have never shoplifted, that's the person who stops you when you shoplift. And nowadays things are different, because there's all litigious and everything, but I'm older than I look. And back in the day, I'm in my early 20s, I'm training to be a pro wrestler, and I'm working in some Rite Aids that are in some very bad neighborhoods in Los Angeles. And the way the law worked when I was there is if you wanted to stop a shoplifter and have them prosecuted, they have to leave the property, which means they have to have 1 foot out the door, which means 1 foot out the door and I'm on them. So I had many a squabble with many a gangbanger back in the day over bottles of liquor and cans of beer. And so you learn pretty quick how to handle yourself. And because if you don't, you can't do that job. At least you couldn't back in the day. Nowadays, you get to just wear a jacket and stand at the door and greet people. And if somebody shoplifts in some communities, you just tell them, have a nice day. But back in my day, we had handcuffs and pepper spray, and we were tackling people every day. And, those were good old days. I wouldn't want to do it now. I'm way past that. I'm a gunslinger. I'm an old gunslinger, and my revolver's in the holster hanging on the wall. But that doesn't mean that I can't pull it out and defend myself if I need to.
Something that Chris needs to keep in mind this coming Friday at Mission Pro Shoot to Thrill. But Joe, outside of the world of wrestling, you are, of course, a reporter for News 4 San Antonio. Speaking, very nitty gritty, would you say that these worlds are more similar or more different than people might think?
They're actually more similar. I mean, at the end of the day, all media that you're ingesting on the screen, whether it's the news, whether it's wrestling, whether it's, this podcast, it's storytelling. That's all we're doing. All we're doing is telling stories. And obviously the way that we tell those stories is very different. But I always said to people, one hand washes the other. And the more that I've done in news and the opportunities that I've had and the people I've gotten to interview, the better it makes me as a commentator and as an interviewer in wrestling. It really helps me understand how to communicate a story, especially concisely. When you have Can I help you? Sorry, my cat's trying to get treats. I'm going to introduce you. This is Megatron. I'm only going to hold her for a couple of seconds. She's winding up. You can see that paw. She's got the claws.
Hi, Megatron.
Get out of here. She's always trying to enslave humanity. Anyways, so in news, if you're a reporter, you're given usually about a minute 30 to tell your story, whatever it is. For instance, today I did a story on the rise in Latino voters in the state of Texas. And I interviewed a former congressman and a professor at Texas A&M San Antonio. And I took a little bit longer with the story today, so it's probably a little bit more than a minute 30, but I had to work for it. I had to, sell that I needed that. Whereas in wrestling, you're also given a limited time span if you're in the pro wrestling, because you could be, working some indie show or even television, especially. Promoter says you got 3 minutes, you got 3 minutes. But you still have to get yourself over. You still have to tell a story. You still have to make it compelling, even if you only have those 3 minutes for a squash. So it's kind of one hand washing the other and be able to be concise, entertaining, and get yourself over at the same time. I always want to make sure when people see whatever report I'm doing, they want to say, I like that reporter. Tomorrow I'm going to watch the news because I want to see what he says. You know what I mean? So, and that's how it is. And sorry, I got to get a better tripod. I keep kicking this thing. There we go. Probably all that delicious, all natural Busch Light from St. Louis, Missouri. Enjoy responsibly. 21 and over.
Must be it. Must be it.
But yeah. Where was I?
No, I think you painted the picture of the similarities between the two worlds. But have the two worlds ever felt, between wrestling and conventional reporting, have they ever felt that at odds with one another?
No. I mean, professional wrestling's so intertwined in local media as it is. Like I said, guys from WWE, they go on to morning shows to promote Raw or SmackDown or SummerSlam or WrestleMania. And, I have done so many stories that even if I wasn't in the industry in the sport of professional wrestling, I would have still covered it because it was a compelling story about a pro wrestler, someone who survived cancer and they wanted to live their dream. And so now they're a professional wrestler and they're living their dream and they're training at some local school. And this is what that's about. Or at Shoot to Thrill, because I'm a part of it as a television personality. The camera comes in from the news station and then it's on the news. So, and there's a lot of pro wrestling that you see in traditional media because people like it. People like that entertainment. And so it's usually never at odds. There's only so many hours in the day. And so the workload is a lot. But I mean, that's what happens when, you decide that you want to have two concurrent careers at the same time, which, in the world that we live in, it's turning out to be kind of the standard. You're going to have your shoot job and then you're going to have your passion job. So Zach, I don't know what else you do for money.
I work in social media.
I was going to say OnlyFans. I knew it. I knew he had an OnlyFans.
Mom's the word on that, please.
Well, you have your mom on it. What? Oh, sorry. I heard that wrong.
Nope, that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. But and I think, if I was a reporter I tell you one thing, I'd probably always be involved in pro wrestling in some way, whether it's, coaching at the Dog Pound Dojo, NWA. If both of those things just disappeared, I'd still find a way to be in pro wrestling. But if I moved away from journalism, I probably could move away from that for the rest of my life and be okay with it as opposed to wrestling, because that kind of shows where your passions really lie. And the emotional toll it takes to do journalism, even like local journalism, especially during the pandemic, it's hard. I can't tell you how many mothers of dead children I've interviewed in my more than 10 years doing this. And at some point, in wrestling, you run out of bumps. You have a card with so many bumps. Every time you take a bump, there's a hole punched in the card. And at some point, unless you're Ric Flair, that card's out. You can't take any more. At some point, there's going to be a tragic interview card, and I'm going to be done exposing myself to those tragic interviews. And that could be coming sooner rather than later. I don't know. But at some point, you got to tap out and go be the public information officer for your local public school district or something.
It can't be easy, man. Yeah, you have all my empathy in the world with working a job like that.
Zach, I'll tell you what really helps though: delicious Busch Light.
Man, that's three solid seamless plugs.
I'm looking forward to the pay-per-view, baby.
You're an absolute pro.
Rocky Mountain, all kinds of things I'm cooking up. And that's the other thing that's too, is trying to find the little things. That's what's really fun. And I think if you look at a lot of wrestlers out there, and I'm sure you've interviewed your fair share, but it's being able to refine the little things. And that's what really is the most satisfying. It's the little things that when you notice, or the little thing that you sell, or the move that you do, and you do it just a little bit different than everyone else. It's those things that are like super satisfying to me. And so like I always have to work on like, what's the little thing I can do here? What's the little part I can insert that'll be creative and different? And then when I pull it off, it's good.
The devil's in the details, as they say.
Yep.
And yeah, that certainly resonates. Let me ask you this. Yesterday I put out a tweet inviting listeners to guess who my guest was. I gave them the criteria that they work in the wrestling industry and they're also an Emmy Award winner. But no one guessed your name. I don't know if a lot of wrestling fans know that about you. So
who else did they guess? Dave Marquez? It's only me and him that I know of. It's only two of us.
The other guess I got was Chris Van Vliet. But I don't know if
nope. I think he has. I think he's won local Emmys. That's a good point. Okay. Chris is a great dude, by the way. I've seen he comes to all the NWA shows. He gets all the great interviews. You know, he's actually given me some really good advice too, because he's made that transition out of news into doing something where he's his own businessman and kind of having his own way in the world. And it's great. He also has the best smile I've ever seen. Like, I don't know who manufactured his teeth. They cannot be real. I refuse to believe that. But so there's a small amount of us. And, you know, it's on my Twitter bio, you know, that it's there. But at a certain point, you know, it doesn't matter if you win Emmys to wrestling fans. That doesn't count. You got to win championships. Who cares? He's an Emmy Award winning. I gotta be the holder of Sweet Charlotte. Have any sort of, you know, something like that. So
it's still a cool piece of trivia, like you say.
It is nice.
Not too many people in your field to have that one.
I do. I'm looking at it right now. It's sitting next to my TV, and you know, I earned that covering some of those devastating wildfires to hit Southern California at the time.
Which year would that be? Forgive me. I feel like the wildfire story is.
Oh, because it's never ending. You know, it's always going to be there. I got to go here. Look at this. 2015. So, boy, that makes me feel old.
Apologies. Didn't mean to do that.
No, but that's all right. But those are good times. And, you know, I probably got more on the way. I mean, with all this COVID reporting, we submitted a lot of stuff from my station. We also had, you know, the big protests that we had, you know, San Antonio, we had our share of big protests with, you know, some rioting and some police cars getting smashed. And I was on the ground for that stuff. And so my cats are fighting. I'm setting them. Relax, guys. It's okay.
That's okay. Mine's chasing one of my son's like toys around the floor right now.
Isn't it great? They always want to play with something that's like not their toy.
Yep.
Like I'm holding on to this toothpick because if I put it down, it will disappear, and then I'll step on it, Megatron, and like so, like I have to. That's my reminder to like throw it out. I'm keeping it in my hand, and then I can be Wolverine.
With one claw.
With one claw Wolverine. Ghetto Wolverine.
Joe, last thing I wanted to do is, I'm going to admit, I kind of wanted to put you on the spot with this one because I found an older clip that I have been in awe with, so much so that I pivoted the direction of my last question for you. This is for a little over 5 years old, and this is from your days at Local 2 in Palm Springs.
I know where this is going.
It has not officially started yet, but that has not stopped thousands of people from heading out to the stores to save hundreds of dollars at local shops. CBS Local 2's Joe Galli is at Westfield Palm Desert tonight, which is not only open, but isn't closing anytime soon. Joe.
Brookberry, it is not closing anytime soon, and a very happy Turkey Day to everybody out there. What's left of it anyways. The majority of people over here at the Westfield Mall actually working off all those calories that they consumed having turkey. Pumpkin right in the pussy. Oh, that's exactly what I did to your mother, buddy. Real classy, real classy. Why don't we just go to the story?
When it comes to trolls, I've always subscribed to like ignoring or killing with kindness, but once in a while you gotta shut them down, and you did that masterfully.
Yeah, I really wish I would have nailed the real classy, but that's okay. That's my only regret from that. Is like probably could have got the better tag out there. But that clip did a lot for me. It increased my social media footprint a lot. One thing that I maybe should add to my Twitter bio, and maybe I did for a while, was that year when that happened, the big podcast with Shaq had played my clip. And Shaq loved it and thought it was hilarious. And then like 3 weeks later, they did the year-end awards for the podcast, and I was the nominee for Person of the Year, and Shaq chose me to be the Person of the Year. So you have to think about it from my perspective. Joe Galli, growing up in Los Angeles, in my youth, is the three-peat Lakers, Kobe and Shaq dominating. And years later, arguably the most famous and one of the best NBA players of all time picks me to be their man of the year. And that's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I probably should have gotten more trouble for that than I did. I think the reason I didn't is because I didn't swear. And it was weird because like in all industries, you probably can get away with something if you're working on a holiday. You know what I mean? So So whether you're slacking off at the Burger King on Thanksgiving or you say something that's that's the other thing too, is who's watching local news on Black Friday? It's not a lot of people. There's probably a football game on. There's something, you're with your family, you're playing cards, you're not watching. You can't wait to see what the local news had. Obviously, there was no news that day. I was at the mall where people were shopping. So I nothing really happened with it until probably midweek the next week. And it really started to gain a lot of traction. And the FHRITP issue that people were doing, and there's always been that in journalism. There's always been Baba Booey, FHRITP, and I'm not sure what it is now because most people don't yell some, but there's probably some, it's fake news. People yell that all the time. It was a major problem with our friends up in Canada, maybe more so than here, and I didn't know that.
Up here, did we cause you trouble?
Oh, that's right. You're in Canada. Yeah,
Montreal.
You connect. Crazy.
What did we do to you?
Well, you didn't do anything to me, but unfortunately, some of your Canadian brethren were really more aggressive with reporters.
Oh, I see.
And so it was getting on a lot of Canadian news. And so one of your Canadian stations wanted to do a live talkback with me from the CBS set. And they reached out to me first, and I was like, that's going to involve an engineer and a producer and my news director. No, I'm not. Sure. No, it's just, I can't do it. You want me to do a phoner or, this is before Skype was a thing, sort of a thing. So it's like, I can't. And so they went around it and they called directly to the general manager of the station. And so we give the general manager of the station anything to do that's not what they're regularly scheduled to do that day. It just rolls downhill. And so it was weird because my news director at the time, Bob Smith, he's retired since, but he pulled me into his office and he said, try to distance yourself from this. And I was like, it's got 1 million views on YouTube. I can't, there's no distance I can make. I didn't put it up. A buddy of mine, actually, Casey, who runs a blog or a website, I should say, called Cactus Hugs, which is a local website about things that were happening in the Coachella Valley. He's the one that, I hope he monetized it. I hope he made money from it. So, because it's got a lot of clicks.
Another thing that kind of rolled out from this clip is a string of really entertaining YouTube comments. that I've actually taken the liberty of pulling up. I was hoping you could actually read them while I pull them up on the screen.
Okay. Is this gonna be like mean tweets? Is this your
No.
version of mean tweets?
Because
I would like to do that. I'd be fine with that. But okay, here we go.
Well, frankly, you had a lot of people on your side, but here you go.
Mm-hmm.
First one.
He responded like he was a gentleman from the 1950s. Thank you. I appreciate that. Ziller Taller Wafas.
Yep, that name goes places. It's kind of hard to. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the Andy Samberg-esque face. I'll take that compliment. That's a handsome gentleman right there.
Is that the first time hearing that one?
Yes, I've never been told I look like Andy Samberg. Some people say Tom Cruise, which is weird because I'm like 2 feet taller. But like, okay. And also my face is at least somewhat proportional. His like teeth are like, or at least they were like, oh, what happened? All right, here we go. What do we else got? This dude sounds like Dave Chappelle's impersonation of a white guy. Give me that leg, boy. Yeah. I like how he remained in the Anchorman voice the entire time because that's my voice, ladies and gentlemen. It does not change. This is how I talk to everybody. If I go to a restaurant, it'd be like, I would like the chicken parmesan, please, a glass of your finest rosé.
And last but not least,
Joe Galli didn't choose Thug Life. Thug Life chose him. Thank you, Cameron. That's very true. That's very true.
I think that's a merch opportunity. If we need some Joe Galli merch out there.
Yeah, I actually think I thought of that at the time. But then like I never acted on it. I wanted to have a shirt that's like, that's what I did to your mother, buddy. And then like Joe Galli on the back. But like the problem with that is, being the professional journalist, you can cross a line, but you can't dedicate yourself to crossing that line all the time. So you can't be wearing a shirt that implies, I'm just banging moms, which there's nothing wrong with that. Moms need attention too.
Not until you go like Joe Galli shock jock.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe when I step away from the world of professional journalism, I might do that. I only ever had one shirt made, and that was had to do with a feud I had with a great man that you're going to see, or you do see quite often on AEW, and that's Peter Avalon back in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Peter did a heel turn where he turned his back on Ray Rosas, two of whom were two of the best wrestlers on planet Earth, and Ray Rosas never got his due, and I hope he gets to work somewhere more and people get to see him more because he's fantastic. But Peter turns on Ray, and they were PP Ray. They were the biggest tag team ever, and I think they're getting back together. But the one thing I called was Peter broke my heart. Like that was the line that I said, and like people like bought into it. So I made a shirt. I had a friend who was really good at design, Mark Donica, who worked for WWE for a time. Still a good friend of mine, love Mark. And he made this shirt for me that says Peter broke my heart, and I was selling them. And I still have so many that I should just throw them. I should donate them to a Goodwill or something. Because no one knows. Because people would see it and be like, "Who's Peter broke my heart?" Were they at Coachella? I'd be like, "Yeah." That's what it looks like. It looks like it's a band. So, all right.
Certainly got a bit of an indie vibe to it. But Joe Galli, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I know this is a busy time for the NWA, and of course the news never stops. And the fact that you took the time to speak with me tonight means the world. Thank you so much. And of course, before I let you go, please let our audience know where to follow you on ye old social media.
Oh, you can follow me. The best place, especially for wrestling content, is you want to follow me on Twitter. That's at Joe Galli News. I'm also on Instagram at Joe Galli. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Snapchat. You Google me, you'll find all those different places that are there. If you would like to see my reporting and you happen to be in the South Texas area, you can find me usually at 5 o'clock at News 4 San Antonio. And, of course, the National Wrestling Alliance NWA Power comes your way every Tuesday at 6:05 Eastern, exclusively on Fight TV.
Do you want to squeeze in a Bush plug one more time?
I'd have to open another can. So now we're going down a slippery slope.
I am a huge fan of the National Wrestling Alliance and how they structure their matches. And speaking with Joe was such a privilege, especially at what I know was a busy time for him covering the NWA. So thank you very much, Joe, for joining me. I've said this before on Power Out, which is my NWA live reaction show taking place on Tuesdays after NWA Power. But there is a strong case for Joe Galli to be named one of the best commentators working in pro wrestling today. I didn't say that to his face during the interview because I didn't want to be too starstruck of a fan. But I say that comfortably now that I'm far removed from the interview. Joe, you are a credit to the NWA. You are a credit to pro wrestling. You are a hell of a commentator. And I enjoy listening to your work while I enjoy amazing matches from the NWA. Now, speaking of amazing matches, we talked about the NWA Empower event and NWA 73 just this past weekend. There's some matches you absolutely need to check out if you haven't already. From Empower, you need to check out Melina versus Diana Perazzo for the Impact Wrestling Championship. And of course, you have to check out the NWA Women's Championship between Camille and legit Layla Hirsch. Two unbelievable matches. I haven't been lost in matches like that in a very long time. And of course, NWA 73, wow, was not without its great matches as well. The main event between Trevor Murdoch and Nick Aldis for the NWA Heavyweight Championship. Wow, just these three matches were just standouts for the entire weekend of great wrestling. So please, wrestling fans, do yourself a favor and please check those out. Now, excuse me, I've got a couple notes here and I'm a little rusty when it comes to recording these intros and extras. But let me just jump to the social medias. If you don't already, please follow the show on Twitter. It's at Smark and Friends. You can follow my personal account as well, at SmarkMouth. Over on Instagram, it's smark.mouth. And of course, you can follow Love Wrestling CA on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. We're even on TikTok. And I'm something of the face of Love Wrestling TikTok because, well, no one else is making videos for the platform yet. But it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for listening or watching. We're going to be back next week. I'm going to be revisiting the original format of Smark and Friends of this very podcast, in which I do a watch along of a wrestling match with an uninitiated wrestling fan. So tune in next week. Till then, friends.